Surprise, this channel is alive. This video took a lot longer than it probably should have, and that's because the first time I recorded this audio, it ended up being over 30 minutes long. And quite frankly, you don't need 30 minutes to learn about the creatures of the kin, and I don't want to edit that much audio. So I'm going to re-record it right now, and you guys are going to get the quick and dirty guide to all the creatures within the kin. Let's do this thing. Alright, first up are worms. These are the first ones you're going to encounter besides herb brides, and when you first encounter herb brides, you're not even entirely sure that they're not human. Worms have a special place in my heart. They're one of the coolest designs of Pathologic. They're just cool lads. They remind me of frogs, but they're not frogs, they're worms. And according to kin lore, worms are made out of the leftover flesh that was left behind when Mother Bodo, the Earth, created mankind. So within the caste system of the kin, they serve specific roles because they're a different people. But yeah, that's the kin explanation as to why they have this crude, almost unfinished look about them. It's a little bit of a cruel way to view a people, but that's the kin's judgment, not mine. They serve a lot of purposes within kin culture, including gathering herbs, creating medicine, and trading. Most worms keep a nomadic lifestyle. They travel along the River Gorkin, place down yurts to make camp, and they eat kask and pumpkin, which explains why this food is so common when trading with kin's townsfolk. It's largely to feed the ongduns, which is a steppe word for shepherd, which can apply to worms, but some ongduns are humans who shepherd, so all worms are ongduns, but not all ongduns are worms. Regardless, in Pathologic 2, worms serve a variety of purposes in terms of their interactions with Artemy, including trading you herbs, food, other goodies in exchange for your tinctures, ammo, and packages. A worm guides your hand on day 5 when it comes time to sacrifice the bull, and it really seems in good spirits when it does it with you. It's kind of like having a fun relationship with you during this big step, a celebration, or ritual. Nobly, they help you travel up and down the river Gorkin, and only raise their prices once during the plague, and refuse you service when you're trying to escape a plague area. How benevolent. And they serve as a pseudo-final boss when they beat your ass in the Arbitoire. And they beat your ass during Rubin's quest. You guys remember that, right? In essence, worms are powerful humanoid creatures who serve the whims of the kin, as that's just their way. Townspeople largely leave them alone, probably because they're big and strong and way tougher than most humans, so they're kind of hard to be racist towards. That said, a lot of worms did live within the termitary in Vlad's Bull Enterprise, and, well, a lot of them died. It seems not even worms are immune from systematic racism costing lives. Herb brides are the beauties of the steppe. These lovely, crunchy ladies have arguably the most complicated role within kin and within town society. But, starting simple, herb brides derive their name from their relationship to herbs and the earth. Twire, blood swish. All these different herbs need special care to emerge from the earth, and herb brides are the ones to do it. While ongduns collect these herbs, these plants wouldn't even exist without the dance of the devoted brides. Every bride is in loose, tattered clothing, and that's on purpose. While it is making them look scantily clad, they don't even perceive nudity the same way as us. Instead, herb brides basically start out fully clothed, and as they dance on the earth to facilitate the growth of herbs, their clothing slowly rips apart over time. And it's actually a ritualistic kind of ripping apart, to the point as where an herb bride urges Artemy not to touch her clothing because it's meant to fall off naturally during her dance and her duty. Here's where things get a bit weird in terms of herb brides. Pathologic 1, it was implied that herb brides and ongduns are of the same species, but they just look different. They're sexually dimorphous. And ongduns are not meant to mate with human females, they're instead meant to mate with herb brides. And even though ongduns look like this, or herb brides look like this, they're the same species. It's kind of weird, and reflects game designers' instinct to make the female versions of a species sexy and the male versions look like monsters. Regardless, that's in Pathologic 1, it's not confirmed in Pathologic 2, but I think it's probably held out in terms of lore. Regardless, herb brides are not humans, is the main takeaway from this. They don't even feel pain the same way humans do, which again is a weird thing considering how feeling pain is an aspect of racism within the medical community, but throwing that out the window. When Artemy encounters Nara, the only named herb bride in the whole game, and is meant to dissect her because she was promised to him, if he cuts her gently and according to the lines, she doesn't feel pain. They have a whole conversation, and in her innards he sees the whole world and it is beautiful, and they speak about it while she's being cut open. That said, herb brides are still living creatures and they still die when you cut them. So, this part of the game, Nara will die no matter what, and when Artemy pulls out her innards to solve the final puzzle of the game, he finds a spindle where her kidney should be, so it's clear that herb brides have different anatomy from humans. That said, herb brides still do feel pain. If you choose specifically to not cut Nara along the lines, she'll have a painful and violent death. And there was that herb bride who was burned to death on day 1, who was clearly not having fun. So yeah, even though herb brides appear human, they're not. They technically fall under the umbrella of chimera, which is what worms are as well. Beings of both flesh and earth, even though flesh is earth, it's a bit weird, but they're not humans, point blank. In terms of how they function in society, because herb brides look like young women, they tend to get a rougher deal than the worms do. They are subject to sexual and violent abuse from the people in the town. We see on day 1 that multiple herb brides are murdered because they think that they were responsible for Isidore's death and Simon's as well. It's rough, and in terms of the jobs they serve, Aspity largely is involved in terms of brokering deals for what the herb brides do, whether they're couriers or erotic dancers. She takes advantage of their beauty in order to plant them in places in the town to feed her information to fund the revolution in terms of getting intelligence. So that's the function herb brides fill in town society, and we see that they get a really rough deal compared to other creatures of the steppe. But that said, when they're murdered on day 1, it's because people think that they're a Shabnakadir, a demon from steppe legend who is said to take the form of a steppe woman and lure men to their deaths and consume them. But they're made of largely bone, so by inspecting their legs or the way they walk, you can tell a Shabnakadir from a regular person and ultimately unveil their identity. Now, these creatures are real, but they don't really manifest in the way that the legends say. These creatures are referred to as albinos in the game, and the first time you run into one of them, it's not really one of them. It actually occurs when Artemy goes to his father, Isidore's hideout, where he performed surgeries and created medicine using harospexy. In this hideout, Artemy runs into one of his childhood toys, which is modeled after an albino. And through this toy, he gains the tutorial of how to create medicines and also kind of speaks to his father. It's unclear if this is a reflection of Albino's actual power or if he's just hallucinating. This doesn't occur in a dream, so it's not that, but it might reflect the Albino's power to affect people's perception and affect the world of dreams. Dreams are important in Pathologic, and we'll touch on that in later videos, but for now, the first encounter you have with an albino is with a fake one, a toy. Meanwhile, the next time you run into one, you run into multiple albinos, or a gaggle, a gathering, plenty of them, like 3. It occurs in a dream. After Artemy does really well in the abattoir, he has this dream where he meets multiple albinos, and they explain a lot of the lore of the world. They describe how the plague is connected to the earth, and how townspeople's colonization, terraformation, and assimilation of the kin people is causing the albinos to go extinct. Whether or not these albinos, or Shabnakadir, actually do transform and take people's appearances and do these wicked things, it's never revealed, but we never see any evidence towards this. They actually kind of just seem to be victims of the town's colonization, since their species is slowly dwindling in terms of population. They reveal a lot of important lore stuff. One of the aspects is that they reveal that the plague is a living creature, which we know that viruses are living creatures as well, but they describe the plague as an actual consciousness and a connected being to the Earth's spirit that exists largely to clean up and defend the Earth from the humans who are colonizing her, and through the creation of the polyhedron, actively killing her. So they ultimately set up the idea of the final game choice, which is fitting because when Artemy is grappling with the end of the game on day 11 is when we finally encounter an albino in real life. That funny thumbnail I made with all the kin creatures and sunglasses, that moment actually occurs during a very serious situation in which Artemy is finally gaining the ability to figure out what to do with the town, either destroy the polyhedron to create a cure for the plague and save everyone in town, or to spare the Earth and the polyhedron and thus keep the Earth alive. The kin, and the albino specifically, approach Artemy and say, hey, if you pull out the polyhedron and destroy it to gain access to all the flowing blood of the Earth to cure this plague, we, all these kin creatures, the albinos especially, will go extinct, and you need to take pity on us. It puts Artemy in Pathologic 2 in a really sad and vulnerable position, because he's actively forced to choose between the kin and the people of the town. It's the choice his father was forced to make, but couldn't. And we'll get into the larger plot aspects of this choice in a later video, if that's what people want to see. But for now, the albinos serve to really represent the members of the kin who are actively suffering and dying based on the town's existence in steppe lands. Because again, obviously, the kin was here first, and the European Russian folks who came later to colonize the area are causing the native peoples to be extinguished. Which brings us to our last creature of the kin, the regular Kinsfolk. These are just people. They're human beings, they're not chimeras like the herb brides, like the albinos, like the worms. They're made of just pure flesh, and they're identical to regular humans because they are just humans. They look slightly different. They have an Asian appearance because their culture has been loosely based off of the Buryat people, an indigenous people who live in Siberia, Mongolia, northern China, whereas the people of the town were given a traditionally European look that are based off of the people of Russia. So all that said, these people are not special or magical in terms of abilities or connection to the Earth. They're not chimeras. They're not supernatural for the most part. There are certain special people who are exceptions. Taya Chaichika's mistress confirmed. But they're just people. And people who, thanks to their culture, are spiritually very close to the Earth. They love it, they feed it, they have traditions based around the Earth, just like the herb brides and worms do. These humans live alongside the creatures of the kin, and cooperate and operate as one collective society. Granted, the society has a caste system, and therefore the humans and the worms and the herb brides are forced into different roles, which is iffy for its own reasons, but for the most part, this was a people of culture, nature, and prosperity. So, naturally, they had to be invaded, subjugated, and enslaved by white people. So, what are the overall lore implications about knowing about the different kin creatures? Well, I think the game is trying to say that colonialism is bad. This is groundbreaking stuff, I know, but it's true. The town's creation and the Russian/white people's domination of the region placed a lot of kinsfolk in an economic situation where they had no choice but to work for Vlad and live in his housing complex, which inadvertently leads to the death of thousands of kinsfolk. Roughly 1/3 of the population of the town lives in the termitary, and most of them die. Worms, herb brides, albinos, and humans of the kin alike are butchered in the name of progress. It's nightmarish, it's horrible, and yet it's true to life. This is the kind of stuff that makes Pathologic shine as a literary work of fiction. It holds a mirror to the real world and asks you to draw conclusions from it. Video game writing is usually very simple, and not much is expected from a gaming story. So when a game like Pathologic 2 tackles hard, serious issues about systematic oppression and colonialism with tact and nuance, it's bound to draw a devoted audience of people who recognize the skill it took to create such a story, which is why a lot of us are sitting here in the first place. As I mentioned, the final choice of the game forces Artemy to choose essentially between the kin and between the people of the town, his white heritage and his kin heritage. He is mixed and therefore is directly placed on the fence of this issue. If Artemy chooses to save the townspeople and cure the plague, herb brides, worms, and albinos will all cease to be, since they are created from and made of the living earth. Aspity too, who is not fully human but a spirit of the steppe, will die and chastise you for sacrificing her. Meanwhile, the humans of the kin will just become humans of the town. They'll continue to lose their cultural heritage and ties as they're fully integrated and assimilated within the town, and progress will continue without the wonders of the kin for the world to enjoy and experience. The natural way is no more. That said, if Artemy chooses to spare the kin and the plague, then everyone in the town who is not part of the kin will either flee or die, which is unclear in the ending. In the nocturnal ending, it's symbolic and unclear what's actually happening. That'll be discussed later. What is clear is that the kin and some of the children that Artemy adopted survive, and, in fact, they thrive. Worms, albinos, herb brides, and even the plague live on. Moreover, the plague won't infect any more humans, for those who are left are truly one with the earth, and thus are unaffected. Just as Artemy wished, he got to keep a bit of wonder in the world. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. Your continued patience and devotion to this channel and Pathologic too is genuinely appreciated. Thank you so much. If you like this video, please consider subscribing or following me on Twitter. Both are called Loquacious Lore, and please feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion about what I should do next, or just discuss the lore in the comments. These videos are largely a way for people to begin discussing the ideas in Pathologic, and I want to hear your thoughts. Also, please consider again donating to Black Lives Matter. The protests have been going on for a long time now, and progress is slow, but it's happening, and the secret police from the federal government are arresting people in unmarked vans, which clearly means this idea is worth perpetuating and worth supporting if the government is so eager to silence and stifle it. So make sure you get out there and do what you can to support the cause. Links in the description. Thank you so much. Peace out.